All right, well, welcome everyone. My name's Walt Michael, and I'm the moderator, I suppose, of the Search for Common Ground class here during Traditions Weeks. And this is our flagship class. It's the class that allows us to look into the lives of and the work of the many artists who are with us during the weeks, and to perhaps be thinking about where we're headed. Let me read to you um, what we're doing. So in this, our flagship class, we draw from our experience as artists and human beings to have a dialogue arising from our life together here in community and in the larger society. In an atmosphere of trust and safety, inspired by song, images, and story, we will listen to and learn from the voices of our sisters and brothers from communities represented in our circle. We gather at Common Ground on the Hill in our 30th summer, in the midst of a world stricken by climate disasters while trying to emerge from a 4-year pandemic, financial and ecological crises, wars, never-ending nuclear threats, racial crises, the continued unveiling of systemic abuse, issues of immigration and survival, the omnipresent threat of terror, both foreign and domestic, and counterproductive divisive politics. Yet we also find ourselves at a time of potential for great needed change. We shall discuss and consider what we are doing as artists and individuals to bring about the changes and create the communities that we desire. That's a big, long list, isn't it? And I'd like to welcome Khadijah Ali-Coleman to this circle. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Walt. It's really great to be here.
Well, you come to us by way of introductions by our wonderful Leah Gilmore. That's how we learned of you. And I know that you've taken part in the Govans Monday concerts. And Maria Wong has been instrumental in that work. Why don't you tell us something about yourself? I know that you were poet laureate for 3 years. Is that right?
I'm still poet laureate. Yeah, I became poet laureate, the second poet laureate of Prince George's County in 2023, and my term is until 2026.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
You're still at it. So okay, so the poet laureate, what does that entail? What do you have to do?
So, the poet laureate position means that I am really amplifying literature in Prince George's County, Maryland. And that amplification can look like showing up in spaces, presenting my poetry, curating spaces and stages for other poets to share their work, engaging with the community around poetry making, or even just learning about historical eras regarding certain literary eras that have really impacted our culture. For example, this past February for Black History Month, I produced a symposium remembering the Black arts movement, which took place in the late 60s to the 70s, with Amiri Baraka, Ntozake Shange, a lot of poets, Nikki Giovanni, who we still are familiar with today. I'm really excited about next February, where and just for those watching, you get the sneak peek. It's going to be focused on the Harlem Renaissance for Black History Month next February, which I'm really excited about. But those are the kinds of things that in my role that I do. And it's really interesting because I became poet laureate largely based off of my professional work as a performance artist. And so even more so, I consider myself a performance artist before a spoken word artist, but a lot of my poetry has been performed and has been part of my plays, or a part of the music that I've produced. And so the book that you see, The Summoning of Black Joy, is really my first collection of my work. I've also edited numerous anthologies that has included the work of other people. And so, you know, this role has really required me to give special attention to my artistry and to my work as being an artist and not just a facilitator or someone who curates and programs. So it's been wonderful so far.
That sounds very busy. Um, do you, uh, I'm interested to know that, were you, as a child, were you a wordsmith? Were you a a a budding poet, or is this something that came along later?
I think I've been a writer as long as I've been a reader, but
Mhm.
I can specifically pinpoint when I became a poet. I believe I was a songwriter before I was a poet, but I recall I grew up I was born in Washington, D.C., but I grew up in Montgomery County before my family moved to Prince George's County, where I am now. But at Montgomery County, I was at an elementary school, Woodland Elementary, and I remember the writing prompt of writing a poem, writing a myth, excuse me, about something that existed in nature and writing a story as to how that came to be. And my story was a poem. And after creating that and writing that, I just was hooked. And I've been a writer ever since.
Wow. And so how old were you?
Probably 9.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I love writing. And I love all genres. You know, I'm a education researcher. I've had a career as a journalist. I am a poet, a playwright. I'm a songwriter, a singer-songwriter. So just about every genre you can imagine, I really enjoy trying my hand at it.
We spoke before we came on the air here about your work relative to homeschooling. What can you tell us about that?
So I homeschooled my daughter off and on for 13 years through her P through 12 experience. I am pleased to say I want to take the time to be a proud mother that my daughter just graduated from the University of San Francisco this past May. She had
Yeah.
yay at 20. We really didn't expect for her to graduate. This May. We expected another semester, but she graduated from the University of San Francisco in 3 years. She actually entered the school with an associate's degree. So when I was homeschooling her for high school, she was also dual enrolled at a community college. So she was across the country from me these past 3 years, but a lot of her ability to just really exist and to be self-sustaining as a scholar across the country from me really, I think, was grown and honed through her homeschooling years. So we homeschooled. I started homeschooling her. I th like as early as first grade. Actually, soon after she left Govins, because that Leah didn't know when she asked me to be on the show. She didn't know that um my daughter had actually attended the preschool at Govins
Hmm.
when she was 4 and when we were
Wow.
living in Baltimore. And so when I moved back to Prince George's County, she was too young to start public school. And so I began homeschooling her. And that's why she was off and on in the public school system based on how I felt about the school and how she felt about the school. And then
Mhm.
she asked me to homeschool her for high school. And it just so I got my doctorate in 2020, and my doctorate is in education, and I decided to do a dissertation on African American homeschool dual enrolled students and their perception of preparedness for college, largely because a lot of the literature on Black children is from a deficit perspective, and it also is from how they progress through traditional school settings. And so I wanted to ask and talk to Black children who were homeschooled and who were so they were being homeschooled, but they were also or had recently finished taking college courses so they could speak to those things during their homeschool experience that helped prepare them for college. And I think that research and that that information is going to be helpful for both school children in traditional school settings as well as those being homeschooled. And so in 2022, I released a book that I co-edited, called Black Children, um, Homeschooling Black Children in the US. And I'm working on another book now with a group of parents that I'm editing, called Homeschooling Black Children on the College Pathway.
Interesting. Yeah. So do you see, is that on the rise, or is it sort of maintaining a certain level?
So it's funny because I got my doctorate in 2020, and all my research was done before COVID-19, right?
Hmm.
And so at the time when I had done my research, homeschooling in general, it was really about 5% of children P through 12 were being homeschooled. Um, After COVID, or when COVID broke and schools weren't able to pivot, and it was just a lot of issues with that transition, the numbers increased. And for Black children in particular, Black families, they are it the census did a study that showed that the increase was like 500% in terms of um Black families choosing to homeschool. And just from numbers and things that I've done with my community, surveys and things, a lot of parents are continuing to homeschool, largely for the benefits that range in the ability to curate their child's learning experience, but also the benefits in parenting that folks don't really think about. When you think of homeschooling a lot, you think it's just a replication of a traditional school setting, but many parents are starting to understand that this is really your opportunity to curate this learning experience like no other, and to make it relevant to your learners' needs, but also to your family's needs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Homeschooling's great. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to be with your child.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the downside is that you get to be with your child. Um, I also took note in about the um, the trend towards writing short plays. I
Mm,
know that we were offering that in this week. The class did not fill, as many classes didn't fill. Uh,
yeah.
but tell us about that. What's the idea about behind short plays, and um, why are they getting a lot of traction now?
So that's an excellent question. And thank you for even asking that, because I think folks don't realize when you think of short stage plays, screenplays, a lot of what we're engaged now in this world that is very tech savvy and tech heavy, and information sharing that's happening is usually um, so abundant that many of us have to develop these skills of being discerning of, because it's just so much a lot of times, and people that make the announcements, I'm going to be taking a break from social media because it's just so much. But a lot of that is because it's just so much content. And so you are finding that um, people who are creating content, whether it's to advertise, whether it's to share information, um, for their professional life or in personal life, that they really have to be savvy with being able to navigate this landscape of telling a story or telling a message in a very truncated amount of time. And so when we think of short plays for the stage, or screenplays for film, um, it seems like it's very artsy and something that you do as a hobbyist. And it can be, but it also can be a muscle that you build as a communicator, using technology to share your message professionally or personal. And a lot of people, don't think of a short stage play as really what they're watching when they watch a show like Saturday Night Live or a sketch show. Sketches are short plays. When you're watching a TikTok And you see, you're like now with the TikToks, sometimes you don't even know if it is a skit you're watching or if this is something that really happened. But it's a play. It's a play, and it's the same elements of a play or a film that are being put into action. And so for someone who does the I'm a playwright, I'm a screenwriter, but I also for many years have taught communication studies as well. And there are three reasons when we communicate, we're sharing a message, and there are three messages, three types of messages, and that's really it. It's to inform, to persuade, or to entertain. And of course you can have a message that has elements of all of those things, but it's usually one of those elements that is the leading reason why you're communicating. And so I think it's helpful for folks to really build the muscle, excuse me, to be able to share messages in a really condensed amount of time, whether personally or professionally.
Mhm. So I guess it was your website. I can't remember where I saw this, but you were working with a circle of people.
Mm.
So were they writing with one another, or were they sort of on their own? In your class, is it a group project, or is it a series of single purpose things?
I usually work in a circle, so I'm not sure
Mhm.
what you were referring to. I don't even know if maybe it was yesterday, because I had a writing workshop yesterday, Writing for Liberation, that I was teaching in Mahogany Books. Shout out to them. I was in partnership with them, and we were in a circle. But I find that I often, if I'm able to facilitate and we're able to set up in a circle, I feel that that is my ideal classroom setup, largely because I think that it illustrates the point that every single person that is included in where we are right now is meaningful, and the class is there. We are co-facilitators. I may be the person that's booked as the teacher, the instructor, the professor, but we all ultimately are going to be co-facilitators, particularly in spaces where there's some type of devised work or something that's being created. And so I'm not sure what you saw, but I know that I recently also taught a class on the the three-part act sequence, which is really inherent in storytelling. And that's also what I'm going over now in this week with Traditions Week with my brilliant students, who I just had a fantastic time with today. And we had our Zoom circle where we're all creating and conversing with each other.
Tell us about that class.
Oh my goodness. So it is focusing on filmmaking, or not filmmaking, excuse me, on screenwriting. Because there is a distinction. So it's not a filmmaking class. So we're not dealing with any technology. I'm not showing the elements of production, post production. It's focused on storytelling, but through the genre of screenwriting, where we are just identifying the ways that stories can be told in this three-act structure within a very small amount of time, for many of the reasons what I just shared with you. Um, and that it can be done, and it can be done in ways where your characters a lot of times aren't engaged in dialogue, where things are being shown instead of told. And so today we spent time in an activity, and also watching a short film to illustrate that. And that's what I have planned this week. Is all about watching films, writing, engaging with one another, giving constructive feedback, asking questions, and really leading to the participants being able to have something that they've created during our week together.
Mhm. What do you find is maybe the thing that is most concerning to your students now?
To the students in the class currently, or
Any class, just in general.
um
We started with this preamble about all the things that are happening in the world around us.
yeah.
And do you find that instructing or teaching people how to write and express and put things into some kind of a format is therapeutic for them in terms of dealing with the world. There's a lot to deal with now.
It's so much to deal with. And I think going back to what I was talking about in terms of the information overwhelm and how we really have to make time to disconnect from all of this. There is the reason why that is problematic is because I like technology. I love the internet. I see the value in it, but I also see how it can create a disconnect between our spirit and who we are, a disconnect from ourselves, like who are we, and not really having a sense of who we are in the in place of all of this, because we're shown this information from other people. So I have students a lot of times who really are coming to writing, coming to whatever art form or it is that I'm teaching, coming with questions that they don't realize are really questions that they have for themselves. Like, who am I? What do I believe regarding this topic? Who am I in relation to this art form? And so a lot of my activities really help folks to really kind of get some grounding into either reconnecting with themselves or learning new things about themselves that they didn't really know. I think a lot of times we compare because of the nature of our world right now with these computers in our pockets and our hands. When we're seeing everything else from the outside, we tend to compare, but it's really hard to compare yourself to other people that you don't know, and when you are disconnected from yourself. And so I think that is a lot of times when people are coming to the arts and they're coming to workshops, yes, they have questions about this art form. Yes, they want to build a muscle in the art form, but yet they also want to be connected to that part of themselves that they may not know yet, or they somehow lost connection with.
Mhm. Yeah, so my mind is going to this short film that I've seen on the internet that I'm sure a lot of people have seen, where a father has taken the games that the son is playing and runs over them with a lawnmower.
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, and the son is just freaking out, like,
I think I know what you're talking about. When you say games, you're talking about the video
yeah,
games. Yeah.
yeah, the technology, and
Yeah.
here's a father's, he's trying to get the son to enter the real world, or the the world in which we find one another, and in doing so, he was destroying the world that the child had built for
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
And I think over our 30-year history here, I mean, we started before there was email. A little
Mm.
bit of email going on, but virtually every person that came to Common Ground was a result of seeing a letter or a catalog that we mailed out or a conversation.
Mm.
And now we are connecting by way of this technology that doesn't truly connect us. It
Mm.
does. It connects us. It allows us to watch this and but keep scrolling and you're gone. So I
Mhm.
don't know. I sort of went off on a tangent there, but I think that,
No, no, no. I think it was on point.
yeah.
I think that video itself, I remember just feeling that video was very violent to
Oh
me.
yeah.
It was very violent and it was very traumatic, but it spoke a lot to the relationship or the lack of relationship that existed between the son and the father, and that if that was the um what was resorted to, it was because there was nothing else that they saw as an alternative. And that in itself really was tragic for me. But I think that when we even talk about communicating with each other and relating with each other, um, I think that that speaks a lot to, we relate to other people based on how we relate to ourselves. And so, when folks say the technology is the problem, I really try to dig deeper as to what exactly do you feel is missing because of the technology. And it leads to conversations around the communication, the way that we are communicating, the things that is in the communication process. Anything that distracts us from the intent of sending our message is called noise. So what is that noise? Those things that disrupt this intent that we have. And for a lot of us, we have become so set in our communication patterns that these changes in technology make it difficult for us to change and adopt and adapt to what the technology requires us to do. I'm not going to go any deeper than that, but that video is very traumatic. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think that many people can identify with it from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So what's down the pike for you now? What are you looking at? What will be your next thing, or just more of what's your continuum?
Well, okay, so I do want it to be clear that right now, so I have been working 2 years with an organization as executive director, and in May I actually started my own nonprofit, Black Writers for Peace and Social Justice. And I turned 50 in December, and um, for the past 6 months, I've really been trying to um, discover what it is that um, I can do and how I can um, not only, I think I've been doing a good job for the past 20 some years as a community builder, but how can I put in practice these tenets and these principles of peace and social justice? And so this nonprofit has really allowed me to articulate what my ideas of peace and social justice, what that looks like. And from that, also identifying what liberation is. And I had the privilege in 2005 being trained in a theory called Advancing Youth Development Theory, AYD. And it was presented through an organization that no longer exists in Washington, D.C. But I was at the time was working with Covenant House, Washington, out of D.C. And Vincent Gray, who's the former mayor of DC, was actually the executive director of Covenant House at the time. And he made it mandatory for all of us working with young people to get trained in advancing youth development theory. And this theory, what's foundational to it is that youth development is always something that's going to be happening. Youth are going to develop no matter what, because they're growing, right? But positive youth development is what is it that those of us who work with young people are doing to help facilitate that experience to be one that young people are receiving services, supports, and opportunities to help facilitate positive youth development. And so this training in 2005 was it was so paradigm shifting for me, but it also gave language to a lot of things that I already knew and implemented as a youth worker, but it gave shape and language to it. And one of the activities that we first were trained on was writing a dear little letter to someone that we loved, a young person who we loved, and writing a letter to them about all the things that we wanted for them as they grew. And you know, at the time I was had only been a mother for 2 years. And so of course it was written to my daughter. And once you read this letter and you share it, what the facilitator then tells you is that everything that you wished for that young person is what the young people that you work with deserve, and how everybody wants these things for their young person. It is your job and it is your responsibility as a youth worker, and youth workers are every teachers, aftercare workers, anybody who has some type of professional role working with young people. And at the time, I was the assistant director of prevention services working with children aged 11 to 17 in out of school activities. And so I was developing programs, academic programs, recreational activities for young people. And so that activity, that training really expanded for me that this idea of services, supports, and opportunities. So if we are creating opportunities for people, we have to have the services and supports in order for them to be able to take advantage of the opportunity, or it's not an opportunity at all. So a service is something that you do for people, a support is something that you do with them, and an opportunity is something that they get to do. And so in answer to your question of what I'm doing now and with my nonprofit, and even talking about this idea of liberation, it really revolves around this idea of when we think of opportunities, what are the services and supports available for us to have opportunities? Because that in itself is an act of liberation. Having agency, having freedom and access to things is liberation. And so how do we write about liberation or write for liberation? Well, we are then bringing attention to those things that call truth to power, that create access, that are opportunities for other people. And so that's really where my work has moved into. And I'm really trying to emphasize in this stage of my life.
So it comes down to resources, right? And
Well, it does. And I love that you even bring that up, because even when we talk about resources, it's all relative, and it's how we are even perceiving something that is before us, but it also speaks to access. We know school systems that have, if we're talking about resources being money, that have lots of money, but how is that being allocated? And how and what is the visioning, what is the vision of those who have access to that resource to then implement? And so a lot of our conversations around opportunities always come back to the services and supports, and then the people who are responsible for providing this to an individual, to a group of people.
mhm. Wow. Well, it sounds like a lot of work. Sounds like you're busy. So as an artist, do you take time to say, okay, I'm doing this, I'm teaching this? Do you take time to go to that quiet space within you and tap into that and produce something for you, just for your own well-being?
That's a great question. I have not been intentional enough in about that. And I actually thought it was a problem when I looked at how I did that, which was usually either scheduling that time or doing that type of work, artistic work or my creative work, before I had to do like a task for someone else, whether it was my job or as a parent. And I now have to accept that that's just how I create. Like, for instance, um, when I started writing short plays and short films, a whole heck of a lot. I would say it was during my doctoral studies, and it was usually as a tool to be doing something that was light and fun for me before I had to dig into a 20-page research project. And
Yeah.
so I was like, I want to just be able to do it without it being an avoidance tactic or before something. But I have accepted that that's usually what gets me my most creative. If I have something really big to do that is not fun, then it's like, let me do something fun to get me in my mind space, and that works for me. So yeah.
Well, thank you. And So I hear you talking about music a bit. Tell us about your music.
So I have many. So for anyone who's into astrology, you know about the sign Gemini. My sun sign is actually Sagittarius, but my rising, my ascendant is Gemini. My moon is in Cancer. And so I just got a lot of things. Many irons in fire. But I have a music name. My stage name as a musician is Khadijah Moon. And so I released my first CD in 2016. And then my group Liberated Muse, I executive produced our CD that came out in 2018. And then I've had songs come out, but I've done a lot of musical theater. So I have a couple of CDs out of songs that I've written for my plays. And right now I got a grant recently from Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council to do audio and a video companion to my book that you see, The Summoning of Black Joy, that came out last year. And I'm writing songs for that. So it was supposed to just be recordings of me reading my poetry. I asked my partner, he's my producer, to have some music. And so this has now blossomed into where it's songs and all of this. And, you know, it's so totally me, being extra, and it just blossoming into something that was not the initial intent. So
You are a singer.
I am, and I play djembe. I'm by no means a djembe player that could be teaching anything, but
Yep.
I'm a singer and a songwriter. Yes.
Uh-huh. Would it be too much to ask you to do a reading now or a recitation or a song?
No, it's not too much. I
Yeah.
think, let me think. This is from my I do a bit, just a little. It's called Be Who You Are. I think it's a good closeout. It's from my CD, Song of a Space Cadet, that came out in 2016, Khadijah Moon. It's on my website, khadijahonline.com, if anyone is interested. Let me see. The usual stuff they tell you isn't true. There is no money fix or pathway to a better you in a bottle or in a pill. The only choice you have is really to be real. I feel ya. Sometimes this life seems just to be a joke. Mm, but don't let it kill ya, get you down, or even make you choke. It's like a film, yes, the only one you can't rewind. But at the end of it, you'll find you were the star. Be who you are. Be who you are. Be who you are. Be who you are.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Sorry for all the pitchiness. But I love performing that because live a lot of times, because I ask folks to shout out when I'm doing the refrain, to shout out who they believe themselves to be. And so I just love it when we're activating the air and folks would be like peace, love, sister, mother. So I should have asked that before I began, but it's all good.
It is all good. Well, I've really enjoyed speaking with you and learning from you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I hope that you'll continue to be part of this little community that we have, this 30-year-old nonprofit.
Yes.
Yeah,
Can I share something with you, Walt?
sure.
Okay, so this was really a highlight of my day today with my students in my class, is that one of my students, Tony, is at a conference right now, Skills USA, and that is actually an organization that used to be called VICA, Vocational Industrial Clubs of America. And that is actually how I first heard about Westminster, Maryland as a high schooler, was because I would come out to Westminster for VICA competitions.
Huh.
Um, and so it was just, and that is how I got into public speaking, and being a communications professional like I am, is because through VICA, I competed in the extemporaneous speaking contest that they would have. So my mother forced me to take electronics and to be a vocational student. I wanted to be a welder because of flash dance, or an auto mechanic, and she made me take electronics. And I tried to do everything but be in the classroom. My teacher recommended me to go in and try for speech, and I wound up being the president of our VICA chapter here in Prince George's County,
Huh.
Crossland High School. So that, I just want to say that I love the community that you have in finding out that there's connectivity, common ground
Yeah.
with some of my students, because that just made my day. I'm about to go tell my family because they are so sick of me talking about VICA. Um,
Well, I hope, I don't know what you're doing July 7th through the 13th, but every night we have a free concert and art talks, et cetera. So come on out and see us in person. I don't know. You're
Yes.
probably busy, but
I would love to try to do that, because I wanted to come out at the time when we were scheduling. I couldn't do in person, but I definitely will make an effort to try to join you all.
yeah.
I
Well,
love what you're doing.
thank you so much for being part of this, and we'll keep an eye out for you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you all, and happy first day to a wonderful Traditions Week. I'm really excited.
Let's keep searching for common ground wherever we go.
Yes. Yes.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.